So today is Monday, August 10th, 2026. And if the temperature outside your window right now is over 70 degrees, the biological brakes in your brain have actually already started to fail.
Yeah, they really have.
Which is wild to think about. Today, we're looking at the exact biological reason why the summer sun turns us into, frankly, completely hostile versions of ourselves. And more importantly, we're going to give you the exact science-backed toolkit to cool your body and your temper.
It's just a really fascinating intersection of disciplines. For this deep dive, we're pulling from some recent medical insights, specifically including crucial protocols from family medicine physicians, Dr. Brenna Connor and Dr. Rachel Marquez. And we're sort of synthesizing their medical perspective with a stack of pretty alarming new climatology and behavioral studies.
Right, because we want to find out why a sunny day can turn, the person standing right in front of you in line for iced coffee into what feels like a deliberate villain. And to do that, okay, let's unpack this. We have to start by looking at the sheer scale of what we are dealing with right now, globally. Because the environment is applying a level of baseline stress to the human body that we just haven't evolved to handle yet.
Yeah, that baseline stress is what climatologists and behavioral scientists refer to as the temperature aggression hypothesis, or the heat aggression hypothesis. And the foundational context for you to know here is that the world is undeniably changing. In certain locations, we are currently seeing up to 50 more heat stress days per year.
50 more days. That's almost 2 full months.
Right. But it's not just the daytime highs that are doing the damage. The nights are getting hotter, and they're staying hotter, too.
Which means you're essentially marinating in this heat around the clock, right? If the night doesn't cool down, your body never gets that physiological reset period to recover from the stress of the day.
Yeah, precisely. And without that reset, the breaking point for people arrives incredibly fast. Let's look at this brand new 2026 study. It was published in the Nature Portfolio Journal, Communications Sustainability.
Okay.
The researchers analyzed the link between short-term temperature spikes and violence. And what they found was that as temperatures rose, violence-related hospital visits, and that encompasses both interpersonal violence and self-inflicted harm, by the way, they increase significantly.
Wow.
But the most crucial detail of the entire study is that these violence spikes happen specifically in the first 2 days of high heat.
Wait, the first 2 days?
Yeah.
So this isn't about the long, slow, miserable grind of August wearing you down. It's an immediate shock to the system before your body or even your community has any chance to biologically adapt.
That's exactly it. The human organism is completely caught off guard, and the threshold for this aggressive behavioral shift is much lower than you might think. Like another piece of data we analyzed focused on Los Angeles, it showed that violent crime actually bumps upward when temperatures exceed just 70 degrees.
Hold on, 70 degrees? That's essentially room temperature.
Yeah.
That's a pleasant spring afternoon for most people. How can 70 degrees possibly be a trigger for violent crime?
Because it's not actually about the absolute temperature, it's about the deviation from the local norm and how quickly the body is forced to initiate minor physiological stress responses. When your environment suddenly demands adaptation, your body has to divert energy to cope.
Right, it's the sudden shift.
Exactly. And we see these stress responses scale up globally with very specific populations bearing the brunt of it. In 2023, research out of South Korea showed a direct increase in deaths by assault as temperatures rose. And this was especially pronounced among males, teenagers, and individuals with lower levels of education.
Well, if we unpack the why behind those specific demographics, are we basically looking at populations who are just far more likely to be working physically demanding outdoor occupational jobs?
Yes, absolutely.
Like out in the elements without access to air conditioning. And then, if you factor in teenagers, you have that baseline hormonal volatility already there, just colliding with this massive environmental stress.
That intersection of environmental exposure and biology is exactly what drives the data. And, we also see this stark reality in institutional infrastructure.
Oh, like where?
Well, in prisons that lack adequate air conditioning and ventilation, the probability of violence surges the literal moment the internal temperature climbs above 80 degrees. The population is trapped in an environment that is actively, biologically degrading their impulse control.
It's incredibly visceral to think about a literal temperature gauge dictating human hostility. But, it makes perfect sense for everyday interactions, too. Is it sort of like when you're carrying way too many heavy grocery bags?
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. The plastic handles are just digging into your fingers, your muscles are screaming, and suddenly every single person walking slowly in front of you feels like a deliberate, malicious obstacle. You are so physically maxed out that your perception of their intent becomes totally warped.
Well, what's fascinating here is that the source material actually backs up that grocery bag analogy perfectly. A study from the year 2000 found that when individuals are uncomfortably hot, they literally perceive other people's tones, passing comments, and everyday interactions as being far more hostile than they actually are.
Wow.
So you aren't just reacting poorly to reality, the heat is fundamentally changing the way your brain interprets reality.
Because the brain just doesn't have the biological resources to interpret nuance anymore. It's too busy trying to keep you alive.
Yeah.
So let's go inside that physiological mechanism, because I want to know exactly what is happening inside the body when you step out into that heat.
Okay, so the first thing to understand is that the human body perceives extreme heat not just as a sentinel inconvenience. It views it as a literal life-threatening crisis.
Crisis.
Yeah. The moment you begin to overheat, it triggers a primal stress response. Your body immediately releases a flood of stress hormones. We're talking primarily cortisol and adrenaline. Dr. Marquez points out that this chemical cocktail instantly increases your feeling of restlessness.
So you're basically hormonally prepped for a fight-or-flight scenario simply because the sun is shining intensely.
Right. And you are dealing with a massive internal energy drain at the exact same time. Dr. Connor provides a brilliant breakdown of this. The human body is absolutely obsessed with maintaining a core internal temperature between 97 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is a pretty narrow window.
Very narrow. And maintaining that takes a monumental amount of energy. When you step into the heat, your body goes into overdrive. First, your blood vessels dramatically enlarge, a process called vasodilation, to try and release heat from your blood through the skin.
Which means, logically, your heart suddenly has to pump significantly harder and faster just to maintain blood pressure and push all that blood out to your extremities.
Exactly. Your cardiovascular system is essentially running a marathon while you might just be sitting still on a park bench. And of course, you begin to sweat to create evaporative cooling. But because your body has a very strict, limited energy budget, all those resources being diverted to your heart and your skin means there's very little energy left for emotional regulation.
Wait, if the body is dumping water through sweat to cool down, we're obviously losing water. But Dr. Connor mentions we're also losing critical electrolytes, specifically sodium and potassium, right?
Yes, a massive amount of them.
So does that mean the brain is actually misfiring? I'm picturing like a smartphone left on the dashboard of a hot car in the sun.
Oh, yeah.
When it overheats, the complex apps just crash, the screen dims, and only the most basic rudimentary emergency functions work. Is that what's happening to our cognitive processing?
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. The electrochemical machinery of your brain is absolutely compromised in that exact way. Your nervous system relies on sodium and potassium to fire action potentials, which are the electrical signals that allow your brain to communicate.
Okay.
When you sweat out those electrolytes, those signals degrade. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for complex decision-making, judgment, and impulse control, is incredibly energy-intensive.
So that's the complex app.
Right. When the body diverts blood to the skin and loses electrolytes, the prefrontal cortex loses its efficiency and just slows down.
It crashes.
Meanwhile, the more primal emotional centers of your brain, like the amygdala, remain highly active and completely unchecked. So you are left with a highly reactive emotional center, and the biological brakes, your prefrontal cortex, are offline.
That is terrifying. And because the brain is shutting down those executive functions, a person experiencing this might not even realize their behavior is shifting, let alone that they're in physical trouble. So what does this all mean for the listener? How do you know if you are just dealing with standard summer grumpiness or if your body's energy crisis has actually crossed the line into a medical emergency?
This is a vital distinction, and it's where we enter the danger zone. Dr. Marquez outlines a very clear red line for this. We've established that irritability is a normal, expected physiological response to the heat.
Right, the hanger and the crabbiness.
Exactly. Even physical symptoms like nausea, dizziness, a throbbing headache, and having cold, clammy skin, those are standard symptoms of heat exhaustion. Your body is suffering, you desperately need to cool down and hydrate, but your internal systems are still actively fighting the fight.
Okay, so irritability and clammy skin just mean heat exhaustion. The body's still trying. What is the actual red line?
The red line is the transition from feeling irritable to feeling confused or agitated. When you, or maybe someone you were with, stops being just cranky and starts acting deeply disoriented, That is a clinical sign that heat exhaustion is progressing into heat stroke.
And heat stroke is bad.
Heat stroke is a 9/11 medical emergency, full stop. Other critical red flags include having a seizure, losing consciousness, and this is the most counterintuitive one: hot, dry skin.
Hold on, hot and dry skin. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
If someone is baking in the sun and their core temperature is spiking dangerously high, shouldn't they be drenched in sweat? Why would the body just stop sweating?
Because the cooling system has completely and catastrophically failed. When someone's skin becomes hot and dry in extreme heat, it means their eccrine sweat glands have literally run dry from profound dehydration, or their central nervous system has become so compromised that it has stopped sending the signal to sweat altogether.
Oh, wow.
Evaporative cooling is dead. Without sweat, their core temperature is going to skyrocket to lethal levels in a matter of minutes.
That is absolutely terrifying. It really emphasizes why extreme heat cannot just be treated as a personal inconvenience.
No, it is a profound community health concern. This is exactly why public health officials constantly stress checking in on vulnerable populations. You need to check on older adults, young children, and individuals managing chronic health conditions or those who live alone.
Because they hit that tipping point fast.
Yes. Their cardiovascular systems simply may not have the strength to sustain the marathon of vasodilation required to keep the skin cool, and they may lack the neurological reserves to process the stress.
Okay, so since we cannot control the weather, and we know our internal systems are stretched to the absolute limit, just trying to keep us at 98 degrees, how do we actively manage this? What are the actionable takeaways from our sources to keep you, the listener, from ever hitting that red line?
Well, the absolute first line of defense is hydration, but it requires a strictly proactive approach. You cannot wait for the sensation of thirst. Biologically speaking, if you feel thirsty, you are already dehydrated.
Right.
You have to drink steadily throughout the day. And, tying back to your smartphone analogy, if you are actively sweating, plain water is not going to cut it. You must add electrolytes to replace the sodium and potassium, or your prefrontal cortex will just continue to misfire.
And we also need to look at how we structure our days, right? Because we are so conditioned to think that a beautiful sunny day means we should be outside.
Exactly. And Dr. Marquez explicitly warns against this. If you normally use a heavy outdoor run to relieve stress, doing it in peak heat is going to backfire horribly.
Yeah.
You're just stacking massive physiological stress on top of whatever psychological stress you were trying to burn off.
So move that run to a treadmill inside.
Yes. Do indoor yoga. Respect the sun's schedule by keeping any outdoor exertion to the early morning or the late evening.
Okay, and that concept of respecting your physiological stress extends directly to how you fuel your body, too. We have all experienced summer hangover, where you are dripping sweat, you have absolutely no appetite, but you are furiously angry at everyone around you. Let's talk about fueling that internal marathon. Why does the heat completely kill our appetite when we so desperately need calories to fuel that massive cardiovascular effort?
It's actually a highly intelligent defense mechanism by your body. Digestion is an incredibly energy-intensive process, and it generates its own internal heat, a process known as the thermic effect of food.
Okay.
But it goes deeper than just heat generation. Breaking down a heavy meal requires a massive diversion of your blood supply directly to your gastrointestinal tract.
Oh, wait. Your body is currently demanding that all available blood be sent to the surface of the skin for vasodilation and cooling.
Exactly. You are forcing your biology into a direct conflict. If you eat a massive heavy meal, your body either diverts blood away from your skin, causing your core temperature to spike dangerously, or it leaves the food to sit poorly digested in your stomach, which causes cramping and nausea.
Sounds awful. So what's the fix?
Dr. Connor's solution is to eat light, cold foods. Water-rich fruits, vegetables, yogurt, and salads. They provide the necessary hydration and calories without demanding massive amounts of digestive energy or blood diversion.
So definitely skip the giant midday barbecue platter.
Definitely.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Regarding wardrobe, skipping heavy denim and synthetic fabrics is obvious. But Dr. Connor mentioned a detail about jewelry that genuinely blew my mind. Are you telling me that by wearing my favorite gold or silver chains in August, I am basically wearing a conductive heat-trapping radiator right around my neck?
The physics absolutely support that, yes. Gold and silver are highly conductive metals. They absorb the ambient radiant heat from the sun and the surrounding air, and they trap it directly against your skin.
That's crazy.
And think about it, because you often wear jewelry on major pulse points, like chains resting against your carotid artery on your neck or bracelets right on your radial artery at your wrist. You are essentially placing a miniature thermal conductor directly over the blood vessels your body is desperately trying to cool down.
That is wild. Take off the chains, folks. What about socializing? When it is 100 degrees outside, my instinct is to become a complete hermit, draw the curtains, and just lay flat on the floor in front of a box fan.
Well, biologically, seeking isolation makes sense to reduce ambient heat, but psychologically, isolation rapidly compounds the irritability and the depressed mood we talked about earlier. The experts recommend staying social, but doing it strategically.
Like going to a pool.
Yeah, gather people at a local pool, a lake, or a shaded stream. Water activities are incredibly effective at pulling heat away from the body while simultaneously boosting your mood. Or, just meet up inside for an iced coffee.
But with a pretty major caveat for the iced coffee, right?
Yeah, a massive caveat, yes. You have to go very easy on the iced coffee and, frankly, any chilled summer cocktails. Both caffeine and alcohol are diuretics.
They dehydrate you.
Right. They actively suppress your antidiuretic hormone, which forces your kidneys to flush water out of your system. So you might feel refreshed for 20 minutes while that cold liquid is in your stomach, but you are actively sabotaging your body's long-term evaporative cooling capacity.
Okay, let's look at a worst-case scenario.
Sure.
What if you are stuck in a place with absolutely no air conditioning? Maybe you work in a sweltering warehouse, or your apartment AC just died on the hottest day of the year. How do we survive that environment? Like, how do we rapidly force the core temperature down without just suffering through it?
This requires strategic mechanical cooling, and it starts with managing the ambient heat of your environment. You must block the radiant heat from entering in the first place. Keep your window blinds, shades, and curtains tightly closed during the peak heat hours, which is typically between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. You want to create a cave. And then once the sun goes down and the outside temperature finally drops below the inside temperature, that's when you open all the windows to create cross ventilation.
Okay, but what about our actual bodies? If the ambient air inside the apartment is already hot, how do we force our internal temperature down?
This is where you utilize your body's vascular geography. You want to apply cold, damp towels or just splash cold water directly onto your pulse points. We're talking about the neck, the wrists, the forearms, and behind the knees.
Because those are the areas where the largest blood vessels are closest to the surface of the skin.
Yes, exactly. By applying cold directly to the radial or carotid arteries, you are physically chilling the blood before it circulates back to your heart and your core organs. Immersing your hands and wrists in a bowl of cold water for a few minutes is also incredibly effective for this.
Just a bowl of water.
Yeah. Taking cool showers or misting your skin with water while standing directly in front of a fan to force evaporative cooling. All of this bypasses your body's overtaxed systems and provides direct mechanical relief.
What about what I like to call the AC safari? Say my apartment is an absolute oven, so I walk down to the public library or I go sit in my car with the AC blasting. If I just step into the AC for 10 minutes until my skin feels nice and cold to the touch, am I good to go back to the hot apartment? Does that reset the clock?
It definitely doesn't reset the clock. And honestly, confusing skin temperature with core temperature is a highly dangerous misconception. Dr. Connor is very specific about the timeline of thermal recovery here. Chilling your skin provides immediate perceptual relief, but it takes a minimum of 30 to 60 minutes of continuous rest in an air-conditioned environment for your core internal organs to actually drop back to a safe, sustainable baseline.
Wow. Up to an hour just to get back to baseline.
At a minimum. And if you have already crossed the line into severe heat stress or heat exhaustion, the recovery window is vastly longer. It can take 24 to 48 hours of resting in a cool environment, along with aggressive fluid and electrolyte replenishment, for your body to repair the cellular damage and fully recover from the physiological toll. You cannot just blast the AC on your face for 5 minutes and assume your internal organs and your brain chemistry have bounced back.
That is a massive reality check. We so often underestimate the sheer toll this weather takes on our biology. So just to briefly recap the journey we've been on today. Heat is not just an annoyance that ruins your shirt. It is a profound systemic physiological stressor. It forces your cardiovascular system into a marathon. It drains the limited energy reserves your brain relies on for impulse control. It depletes the electrolytes required for your neurons to fire. And it fundamentally warps your perception, literally turning neutral everyday interactions into perceived hostility. We are essentially biologically mandated to be aggressive when we are overheated.
We really are. And if we take all of that physiological data and connect it back to the macroclimatology data we started with, it raises an incredibly important question for our collective future.
What's that?
Well, if human biology inherently makes us more impulsive, aggressive, and hostile when we are overheated, and we are now facing a future with up to 50 more extreme heat days every single year, how will this fundamentally reshape our daily social etiquette, the dynamics of our workplaces, or even the way our legal and justice systems function in the decades to come?
That is a staggering thought to end on. How do you govern or interact within a society that is biologically primed to be angry for a quarter of the year? That is something for all of you to deeply ponder the next time you feel your temper flaring in the grocery store checkout line. Until then, go drink a glass of water right now. Seriously, go do it. Add some electrolytes, stay cool, check on your neighbors, and keep diving deep.